I'm Coach Amber, and welcome to the MeatRx Success Story podcast. Today we have a special guest with us, Greg, and he's going to tell us about his success story with a meat-based diet. Hi, Greg.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. So tell me where you're from.
I'm in Melbourne, Australia, so a long way away.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to connect times. Okay, so Greg, tell us, what was going on in your life prior to starting a meat-based diet? Give us a little bit of your background. What kind of diet were you following? Were you having any health issues, anything like that?
Yeah, well, I had a heart attack, and that was a bit of a shock because I had thought I was reasonably healthy, and I was eating what I think most people would think was a fairly healthy, low-fat diet, and I was exercising pretty regularly. I was a little bit overweight, probably about 15 kilograms, which is about 30 pounds, sort of heavier than my ideal. But, you know, I thought I was reasonably healthy, so it was a bit of a shock to have a heart attack. It wasn't a really severe heart attack, but it was enough for me to be hospitalized, and I had an angiogram and had 2 stents put into my coronary arteries to keep them open. And yeah, so I was had a bit of a shock.
For sure. That would be very scary to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you first started the meat-based diet, how did you implement it? Like what were you eating?
Well, it was a bit of a long lead up to doing it because I really didn't understand much about nutrition. And I came out of hospital, I was put on a high dose statin and aspirin and a beta blocker and all sorts of other drugs to go along with my stent. And I was encouraged to start losing weight. And most of the advice I got was to cut calories, exercise more, and eat low fat. So I set off on that track, trying a bit harder to lose some weight. But I found it pretty hard. And I was used to eating a lot of carbs. I didn't really like vegetables or salads, to be honest. I liked eating meat and eggs. And I had a bit of a sweet tooth. So I wasn't very successful on the diet. And I was still exercising a bit, but didn't really have much understanding of why I'd had this heart attack. But my daughter actually introduced me to the keto diet. She was trying to lose weight and said, "Why don't you try this?" So I kind of checked it out, and she sent me a couple of YouTube clips, and I started getting really into it. And I soon came across a whole lot of speakers on YouTube that I found really interesting because I had a bit of a scientific background, and I started to understand what had really gone wrong with my health. Hearing there's a group called Low Carb Down Under, which does low carb conferences, and I got into some of the low carb conferences that were held overseas, watching the video clips, and came across people like Ivor Cummins and ShawnBaker and Dr. Tim Noakes and people like that, who just really explained things so well that I started to understand. And that was the real turning point for me, because I realized that my problem was metabolic health, and that I had high triglycerides. I was eating lots of carbs and sugar. And my problem wasn't eating saturated fat and meat and dairy and eggs. It was actually eating too much sugar and carbs. And so I set off on the keto diet and started to lose weight pretty quickly. And over about a year or so, as I learned more about insulin sensitivity and diabetes and the role of grains and carbohydrates in causing inflammation. And my taste started to change too as I got used to not eating carbs and substituting things I liked, like meat and eggs and dairy. And so over about a year, it took to kind of morph into what I'd call a keto carnivore, plant-free, animal-based diet. I wouldn't say it's a strict carnivore, but it's pretty close to that. Yeah. At the beginning, the biggest problem was eliminating carbohydrates. I think that I did get the keto flu, as it's sometimes referred to, because I cut out pretty much all carbohydrates, all of the stuff that I thought was causing my health problems. And so, yeah, from that I did get a bit of nausea, some headaches. I think my what do you call them? So I wasn't eating enough salt, and yeah. So yeah, there were a few little problems, but after that, and getting used to it, it hasn't been hard at all. In fact, it's been very enjoyable.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think there's a lot of good in the diet for sure. So after you had been on carnivore or meat-based diet
Yep.
for a while, what kind of changes did you notice? Was there any health improvements?
Well, because I was so interested in understanding why I'd gotten heart disease and really looked into the metabolic health, I had a whole swag of tests after I got onto carnivore and started to understand that I could possibly do something about my heart disease and improve my general health. So I had all sorts of things measured, obviously the lipids, cholesterol, that sort of stuff, but also inflammation, vitamin B. I had something called a lipid subfraction test, which looked at the density and size of the LDL particles, because that has a lot to do with inflammation and heart disease. And I also learned about coronary artery calcium scans, which can actually quantify the extent of the heart disease you have by calculating the amount of calcium in your coronary arteries. So I had a full swag of tests once I was on full carnivore, or close to that. And then 12 months, or a bit over 12 months, probably 15 months after that, I had all the tests repeated. And what I found was that my metabolic health had completely turned around. My HDL, or the so-called healthy cholesterol, had increased around about 75%, which is pretty unusual. My triglycerides had plummeted down to by about 50%. My inflammation was down very, very significantly. All of the other indicators were good, but the most interesting thing, or most significant thing for me, was that the extent of the calcification in my coronary arteries had been reduced by 40% in around about 15 months, which, as I understand it, is pretty unusual. And there are not many examples that I've come across where people can actually demonstrate this with coronary artery scans that actually show the reduction of heart disease. So I think I've forgotten what the original question was now.
No, no, that was good. I was just asking what improvements, and that's an amazing improvement. So I think you answered it quite well.
Yeah.
Was there anything that shocked you that changed? I mean, obviously that's shocking, but just something that you weren't counting on that was just kind of unusual.
I think most of the changes were things that I'd heard reported a lot from people on low carb diets or on animal based diets. The metabolic indicators all improved significantly. I lost weight. It wasn't a lot of weight, but it was around about 30 pounds and it stayed off. So that it kind of didn't, I mean, it did surprise me, but it didn't surprise me because lots of other people were reporting that. But my doctor said to me, and he was low carb informed and actually a carnivore himself, and he said that with heart disease, probably the best I could hope for would be to maybe stop it. If I was really lucky, I might be able to stop the progression of heart disease, because he hadn't really had any experience of people being able to reverse it. So to reverse it by 40% in such a short period of time really kind of floored me. It really surprised me, and it was fantastic. So yeah, I guess that was what did shock me, and what I'm particularly interested in trying to share with other people, because I think a lot of people think that heart disease is a chronic disease that you can't do much about, and certainly not on a carnivore diet or a meat-based diet. Yeah, so that's probably the thing that did surprise me the most.
Yeah, that is pretty surprising and very amazing. And I think a lot of people will be shocked the same, but gain a lot from your story because, you know, like you said, so many people feel like that's just, they're just going to always, you know, have to deal with this. And you just prove that you can have some control.
Yeah, yeah, you know, it's good. I'm planning to do another set of tests probably early next year, and fingers crossed that it will be even more improved.
Well, I hope so. I hope you have even better news. That'd be awesome. You'll have to keep us updated for sure. Well, Greg, thank you so much for joining us and for telling your story. I think it's very helpful for others to hear these kind of things. So I very much appreciate it.
Yeah, I should add too, just one other thing was that I've been able to stop taking the high dose statins that I've been on since I had the heart attack. I don't feel there's any necessary reason to take them anymore because things have improved so much.
Awesome. I can't believe you didn't mention that earlier. That's a huge thing. That's great. Good for you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, Greg.
Bye.